Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. There are 3 things to be thankful for this week: family, food, and you guessed it, football. Thanks to Hard Rock Bet, you can easily sneak in some bets while your crazy uncle goes on his annual rant. Sign up today and you could feast with $150 in bonus bets. Just place a $5 bet. If it hits, you not only get your winnings, but also $150 extra in bonus bets. That's an offer you can't pass up, even on a full stomach. Plus, this week on Hard Rock Bet, you get 3 50% profit boosts, one for each Thanksgiving Day game. Boost your same game parlay or same game parlay max, so your bet pays extra winnings. Hard Rock Bet offers new promos every single day. Download the Hard Rock Bet app now and make your first deposit. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? Just watched the San Francisco 49ers. They played well this year in prime time. They beat the Rams Thursday night. They beat the Falcons on Sunday night, and they complete the trifecta. They beat the Panthers, who kind of look like the Porta Potty Panthers tonight, on Monday Night Football and kind of dominate. So we'll dive in to some different elements of this game. Just big picture, something most people hammered home was the strength of schedule. And this is a great example. And it's not just the teams you're playing, but the coaching matchups. Obviously, the Purdy-Mac Jones conversation, I mean, it was being discussed by my wife, who was sitting next to me. She's like, is Mac should be? It's like, well, it's not really like baseball where you go to the bullpen when you're paying a guy $50 million a year, but the 49ers, that will dive into Brock Purdy. And once upon a time, the Panthers traded a lot, and I repeat, a lot, to acquire Bryce Young. And that was, man, so we'll talk about that. Some stuff around the NFL. J.J. McCarthy is now injured again. Shedeur Sanders officially named a starter for this week against the 49ers. I dove into some stuff with the Steelers that I want to discuss. We had another coach get fired. We'll dive into some different stuff around the National Football League. But before we dive into this Monday night game, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners in the official ticketing app of this podcast, GameTime. I knew multiple people at this game. Looked like Bosa and Fred Warner were having a good time. I've been to a ton of games at Levi's. The Super Bowl's there. I actually attended it. I bet on the Broncos, one of my greatest wagers of all time. Props to Von Miller. But if you want to go to a football game, a pro football game, a college football game, maybe the college football playoffs, is one of your team going to be dancing, maybe a home game, go attend, we got you covered because GameTime, easiest ticketing app, tickets as low as $100 to attend an NFL game. The price you see on the app when you're looking at the ticket in the stadium is the price you pay, no hidden fees. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account, redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Well, the 49ers win in pretty dominant fashion. It never felt like the Panthers were in that game. The 49ers, with the amount of injuries they have on defense, being 8-4, is a pretty incredible accomplishment. But part of the reason being 8-4 was available, and you could tell at the beginning of the season, even when there were a lot of unknowns, young players, they had a lot of turnover on their roster. And I remember being when I did The Herd, and I was in Los Angeles, and we were doing a segment, and Julian Edelman was there. And we started talking, and Colin kind of brought me in on the conversation. And Edelman kind of got mad at me because we were talking about the 49ers, and this was in August. And I was like, Julian, their strength of schedule is a massive advantage. And Julian, coming from the Patriots, got really offended by that because with New England, they had, 6 times a year, they were playing the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Bills. And listen, in the NFL, you can't ever take teams lightly. But I'm sorry, there is a big difference playing Bryce Young than playing Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, or hell, Dak Prescott. And this is where strength of schedule mattered. This is why when the season started, before I even knew that they were going to have a bunch of injuries, the Niners were a playoff team because of the teams they were playing. And it's not just talent versus talent. It's coaching versus coaching. It's Robert Saleh versus Dave Canales. It's Dave Canales refusing to call run plays for Rico Dowdle, who is clearly Dwaddle, who's one of the best players on their team, who's been one of the most productive running backs in the NFL this year. He was averaging tonight, I think, in the limited action, the 6 carries he had, over 6 yards a carry. It's like, hey, Dave, the guys Robert Saleh is over here coaching. 90% of NFL fans can't name them. You know why? Because their starters who are stars are in the box drinking Heineken Lights, hanging out with their wife, eating chicken fingers. And you're refusing to call runs when you have this season one of the most productive running backs in the NFL. And on the flip side, Kyle Shanahan is going up against the Panthers, who honestly aren't bad on defense. And early on, his quarterback, Brock Purdy's first half, that's as bad of a half as you're going to see a quarterback play. That's Bryce Young. That's Tua. That's Dylan Gabriel. Like, that's an embarrassing half, especially for a guy making $50 million. You can't float the ball over the middle of the field to a guy, J.C. Horn, who's top 10 pick, makes $25 million a year, probably lives in a mansion in a gated community on a golf course, drives a Range Rover. Like that, you don't throw his way if you don't have to, especially over the middle of the field, throwing lollipops. But strength of schedule. If you're playing a good team, Matt Stafford, Seattle, hell, a week ago, playing Jacoby Brissett, who threw for 450 yards, you might be down 10 points at halftime. But instead, you're playing the Panthers and a quarterback who we'll dive into in a little bit, but a coaching staff who felt overwhelmed. Now, I regret taking the Panthers plus 7.5 in this game because I thought, the Niners defense so bad, some backdoor cover. I would say about midway through the third quarter, I went, this coach is atrocious. And listen, maybe it's just a one-off. I'd be lying if I watched that much Panther football. I was thinking tonight, they might be the least watched team in the NFL for football, the casual football fan, for people that do this for a living. They've kind of just been irrelevant. Now, coming into this game, they were relevant. They're 6-5. You're like, okay, they got some momentum. They got some good young players. They got a really productive running back. They got this wide receiver. And Robert Saleh was like, are you really not going to call runs? Like, you realize we are missing star defensive linemen, multiple. The best linebacker in football is upstairs in a cast. His backup is also injured. We have random guys all over the place. Guys that were on practice squads on other teams earlier this season. And Canales like, another pass. It's like, hey, Dave, your quarterback is how bad Purdy was. Your quarterback is playing equally as bad. He just doesn't have the extra 2 picks. But his interception in the red zone was as bad as any pass that was thrown tonight. And overall, his performance was just atrocious. But that's where strength of schedule matters. Because I would guess, and listen, like, how much money you make doesn't define how good you are. But in certain industries like coaching, it does represent kind of respect. And there is not a doubt in my mind that Robert Saleh, as a defensive coordinator, makes more money than Dave Canales as a head coach. I would imagine Robert Saleh is making $5 or $6 million, and I don't think Dave Canales makes that much. And it was clearly evident because Robert Saleh came into this game, and I thought he was the star of the game, got a lot of love. He's an easy guy to root for, member of the bald community, and just a badass. Now, is he, there's a lot of talk about him becoming a head coach again. I hope for the 49ers' sake that doesn't happen. But, like, we've seen a lot of guys get second chances and excel. He clearly is a stud defensive coordinator. His work this season I mean, think how many games. Now, Mac Jones, you could argue, has outplayed Brock Purdy, and we'll dive into that in a second. But for Robert Saleh, and this is why, like, if Kyle Shanahan has healthy players, the offense is going to be productive, right? Tonight, McCaffrey, I'd give McCaffrey some more breathers. They love saying, like, Christian doesn't like coming out of the game. It's like, guys, he's not the coach. You can yank him out, but Christian got 24 carries, 90 yards, and a nice touchdown run. He also had 7 catches. So he had over 30 touches tonight. If you take the 49ers' 3 best offensive players, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, and Juwan Jennings, who looked like Mike Tyson at the end of the game, I do think the safety that used to be on the Raiders, like kind of nut tapped him or whatever. Juwan wasn't playing. Juwan ain't fucking around. Juwan's a little crazy in a good and bad way. But those guys had over 40 touches, the 3 of them. And like Kyle Shanahan doesn't outthink the room. And this is what I respect about Kyle. He has no problem. What he did tonight, Dave Canales can't dream of doing. Calling run plays over and over and over again. And it's not like Christian McCaffrey had 24 carries for 200 yards. He averaged under 4 yards a carry, 3.7 yards. But Kyle's like, this is going to be the game. It's going to be ugly. You're not scoring many points. Neither are we. But I'm going to slow down the clock. I'm going to dominate time of possession. And when you go 3 and out, it's going to feel like a disaster. And Canales like, call another pass. Call another pass. It was insane. So strength of schedule is, as much as we like to talk about, it's like, well, of course, if the Chiefs, play whoever's awful, right? The Arizona Cardinals or the New York Giants. But it's not just the players versus the players. It's the chess game, which in football is the coaches, the defense and the offensive coordinator versus their guys. And that's where the 49ers, adding Robert Saleh this year, have such an advantage against so many of these teams. And it was fully evident tonight that Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh against that crew over there was not a fair fight. And that's given their quarterback threw 3 interceptions in the first half. That's as bad of a first half as Brock Purdy's ever played. Maybe the game, was it 2 Christmases ago against the Baltimore Ravens? I think that's his numbers. I think at the end of the game didn't look that terrible. It's the worst game he's ever played, especially factoring how much was on the line. It was just it felt like a Super Bowl matchup against them and the Ravens, and they got completely punked at home. It was bad. And tonight, I'd argue, was worse because at least that matchup, the Ravens, that was Mike McDonald, best defense in the league. This is the Panthers. And some of these balls, and listen, we'll dive into Stefanski here in a minute. The refusal of Stefanski to show any sort of positivity towards Shedeur, Kyle is the opposite with Purdy. I knew when Kyle came over to the sideline reporter at halftime, if you think he's going to be critical of Brock, you got another thing coming. He's like, love Brock's decisions. He's throwing to the right guy. Like them. He's got to elevate that pass a little bit. Yeah, elevate it a little bit, Kyle. He's hitting the fucking guys in the hands. Like, those are terrible decisions. You can't throw 3 picks in a half. And against the majority of teams, especially the most teams that are 6-5, I would say if you throw 3 picks in the first half of a Monday Night Football game, if you're down less than 10 points, that's a massive win. 49ers had a touchdown lead at halftime. So the team it's obviously a big atmosphere, and the 49ers are a bright lights team. And, like the analytical community, they're big on acting like momentum doesn't matter. There's no different in an at-bat in July as there is in the World Series, that there's no such thing as pressure. Bullshit. I've been to every sort of NFL game known to man. I've been to Thursday night games. I've been to 1 o'clock kickoffs. I've been to Sunday night games. I've been to Monday night games. There's a different feel when the lights are on. There just is. And you feel the pressure. You talk to Troy Aikman and Joe Buck before the game. There's a vibe in the stadium. And the Panthers are used to playing the morning kickoffs on Sunday. They just are. Against the Atlanta Falcons, against the New Orleans Saints. Like, that's kind of their sweet spot. And they go to Monday Night Football against the 49ers. And it just felt like they kind of got shoved around. And this is not 2 years ago San Francisco 49er team that's going to go to the Super Bowl. This is not some roster that is just untouchable because of all the injuries they've had. Now, offensively, they're as healthy as they've been. McCaffrey looks good. Obviously, Kittle's balling. Juwan Pearsall's back. But you could argue, listen, I understand the conversation with Purdy, right? I do get it because his skill set, he should play much more like, obviously this guy's one of the great players of all time, but like Drew Brees, right? Or even a better version of what Alex Smith was for Harbaugh and Andy Reid. But he actually is much more of a gunslinger. And I remember when he was coming out of Iowa State, some of my scouting buddies were like, well, he pushes the envelope. Now, part of that is at Iowa State, he kind of had to carry the team. Well, early on with the 49ers, he kind of felt this like perfect balance. This year, I mean, he's thrown 7 interceptions. He has more interceptions in how many games has he played? 4. Mac Jones has played, the majority of the games and has less interceptions. And the other thing with Purdy is, listen, every quarterback every once in a while are going to be late on a throw, on an out route. A guy's going to jump the route or a tip ball, into coverage. Like, it happens. Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, even Aaron Rodgers a time or two. But Purdy's just inability to make a sound decision sometimes over the middle of the field on a guy that is covered and these lob throws, it's just like this. These are terrible decisions. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I feel like a large percentage of his interceptions these last couple of years have come over the middle of the field. That is an area that's kind of killing them. And obviously against the Panthers, didn't bite him in the ass. But this is a team that, they got a tough game coming up on the road in Cleveland. If they are able to win that, they're 9-4. Even if they lost, they're 8-5. They still control their own destiny. But a game like against the Chicago Bears, which they play in a couple weeks, the Bears create turnovers constantly. They have like 3 guys with 4 or more picks. So you have to be very, very careful with the ball. And listen, Caleb can be a little hit or miss, but like they can score touchdowns. So when I'm looking at the schedule, this week, the Browns defense at home is just good. And Purdy went there a couple years ago and was atrocious. The Titans are a joke, but they go into the Colts and then the Bears and then Seattle. Like, he's got to play a lot better. Now, I get he's coming off the injury, a little rusty, but to me, there's a difference of like a little rust and just the decision making. And to me, the decision making, and I understand Kyle supports him, but like, I don't love your inclination to play like you're Mahomes or Josh Allen because that's not really who you are. It's why the 49ers do their best work when he's just kind of distributing it to the guys. I don't need you scrambling around doing a 360 and then trying to hit some sweet play because typically that doesn't go your way. It's why they had so much success with Mac Jones. He just kind of ran the offense. Now, against the better teams, especially with this defense, they're going to need his playmaking. But gosh, he's thrown a lot of interceptions these last 2 years. He really has. And I don't want to hear anyone defending it. You start making $50, $60 million, you're held to a super high standard. This is no longer he's making $1 million a year and he was picked 262. He's now on a massive contract. The expectations are really high. And when you're 8-4, anything less now than a wild card berth is devastating. And you have this stretch now between the Browns and the Titans. You at least got to win one of those games. And then you'd be 9-5, worst case scenario, potentially. You could be 10-4 going into this last stretch of the Colts, Bears, and Seattle. And by the time you get to that Seattle game at home, it might not even matter if you're able to take advantage of that Bears game and the Lions or the Eagles or the Packers kind of knock off the Bears. But he's got to play better. He just does. Because here's the one thing I know, and I thought Troy Aikman did a really good job of this tonight. The 49ers have a unique crew. They have superstar power on their team, especially with the guys injured. Fred, Nick, Christian, George. These guys are all like Trent, the ultimate team guys. None of them are ever saying I, me. It's always we, us. George Kittle has just as much fun if they run for 200 yards and he doesn't have a catch and he's sealing the edge and they're pulling him as he does when he catches 10 balls for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. McCaffrey will do whatever it takes to win, right? He's, for a guy that is just going to be an all-time, Roger Craig, a 49er legend, is in tears talking to Christian before the game. Like the respect he has Christian is really much more, especially this guy. They showed some highlights of him earlier on in his career when he had the 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 catching yards. Felt like he was a little more explosive. He's a little thicker now, a little bit more of a power back, but it's kind of like a blue collar lunch pail guy now. And their strength really is the mentality of their guys. It's why this Ayuk situation is just like, yeah, get out of here. We don't do this bullshit because this is not how we have functioned for a long time. Our guys are not wired like this. Their championship mindset and mentality in their star players has helped separate them over the years. It's why if I'm Dave Canales and the Panthers organization, I'm taking McMillan. I mean, who knows with Bryce? I'm taking some of my other young guys on this core and going, look at that. That's what we want to be. That's what it takes. When the lights are the brightest, we can't wilt. And I don't even blame Tet McMillan for being a little overwhelmed tonight. When is he used to that? University of Arizona, playing Baylor at noon in front of 30,000 people, playing Kansas. Like, no. And I'm a Tet McMillan guy, but it's not like this guy's coming from Bama, Georgia, or Ohio State. This environment, Monday Night Football, the way to the world, like, hey, man, we're going to need 9 catches from you. And the 49ers defense, while it has issues, their corners are actually pretty good. Ronaldo Green, second rounder, Florida State. Lenore makes $20 million a year. These are the two guys you're going to go up against. And they both will hit you. So it's like this ain't K-State here on a Friday night on ESPN 7. This is the 49ers, who have been, some of these guys have played in the Super Bowl. Like this is no joke here, man. And it felt overwhelming. It felt like they were overwhelmed. And the 49ers were not. And their coaches definitely were not. And they took advantage, despite their quarterback, who, again, I don't think Purdy's overwhelmed, but he's just playing like shit. Right? I remember Coach K in the Duke documentary said that when Christian Laettner was at the line, he's like, he looked at one of his assistants in like a tape review. And he says, you know the thing with Christian? He might miss one of these shots in a big game, but it won't be because he's nervous or fazed by the North Carolina crowd. He'll just miss, right? Steph Curry misses some threes. Not because he's nervous or the moment's too big or he's thinking too much. Just sometimes you miss. And listen, it's pro sports. Sometimes you lose. Sometimes you get beat. Sometimes the guy makes a play. But like when you're overwhelmed, you got no shot. And I think, speaking of this Panther situation, their quarterback feels a little overwhelmed. And I think looking back, he's a great kid. I've been a huge fan since he was at Alabama and beat Georgia in that SEC championship game with Jamison Williams and John Mechie. And then I think either Williams or Mechie got hurt in that game, and then the other guy got hurt in the playoff game, and then he didn't have either in the rematch against Georgia. But I have a ton of respect for Bryce Young as if you're 5'9" and 185 pounds and you can play in the SEC and the NFL, you're a tough motherfucker. Problem is he's just not that good. And we will never see a guy his size ever drafted number 1 again. Honestly, drafting a guy 5'9", 185 pounds in an NFL draft at quarterback is borderline insanity. Now, he was an excellent player at Alabama, but I just think there's a big difference sometimes between college and the pros. Ask J.J. McCarthy. And you're watching him play, it's like his coach isn't helping him out. It doesn't feel like anyone knows what's going on. I mean, he got a intentional grounding on a play that I guess by the letter of the law was intentional grounding, but even Aikman was like, he wasn't intentionally grounding the ball. Him and the wide receiver are just both in different planets of what's supposed to happen. And that happened 4 or 5 times tonight. The guy would go right and Bryce would throw left, or Bryce would throw left and the guy would go straight and the ball would just land in no man's land. And I'm thinking to Dave Canales, are you guys practicing? Do your guys have, does Leggett, McMillan, your other wide receivers, and your quarterback have any clue what they're doing as a group? Because it did not feel that way too many times tonight. This is the NFL. This is end of November. It's one thing, week 1, young team, totally get it. Training camp, hell, even early October, a couple games in. You guys are 6-5. To not be on the same page, Pretty embarrassing. And part of that, like on the quarterback, like the whole thing falls on you. But in this modern day business of the NFL, when I draft you in the first round, I have to decide after the third year whether to pick up your fifth year option. And to me, it's an easy answer with this guy. It's a no. Now, in a perfect world, I probably get a different quarterback next year. We know how difficult that is. So if you tell me who the Panthers quarterback will be in 2026, I'd be like, more than likely it will be Bryce Young, but it will be on his last year of his contract. And I would imagine that he won't be on the team after next year. And I think it all gets back to I even remember going to Fresno State, coming from Cal Poly, where I was helping the football team, and thinking of the different size of guys and athletes. Just going from D1AA, which we were a playoff team when I was at Cal Poly, playing like the North Dakota States and Montanas, and then going to Fresno State, who was obviously not even Power Four. They're playing, the BYU's, the Utahs, the Boise States. And then when I went to the NFL, seeing the difference of the next level of guys where every dude on that team looks like Ryan Matthews. And it's not a sport for little people. It really isn't, especially a quarterback, because the guys standing in front of you are at the smallest are going to be 6'3". I would imagine the average size of an offensive lineman at guard or tackle in the NFL is over 6'4", and the average tackle is between 6'5" and 6'6". So it's just a numbers game. If I'm 5'9" and I have a guy 6'6" to the left or right of me, and I'm trying to throw a slant or an out route, I would imagine a route that you throw more consistently than a post or a go route. It's just going to be difficult to see. Because I think a lot of times, and this was a play, I don't know if it was last week or might have been 2 weeks ago when Bryce threw an awful pick. I truly believe he just threw it to the spot the guy was supposed to be and he can't see. That hurts Purdy. And Purdy's over, like 6'1". And he gets a lot of balls batted down. He struggles to see. He oftentimes, because he is smart, like Bryce, they just throw to a spot knowing the guy's going to be there. But like if you're Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or Carson Palmer and you're 6'6" and you can see, maybe you're less likely to pull the trigger because you know it's a bad decision. And I would always, now you can only take what the league gives you, but you can't operate at 5'9", especially with his physical attributes. Even my wife was like, isn't Kyler Murray really small? I'm like, well, yeah. One, Kyler Murray, I would say, is widely considered as not that good either, but way better than Bryce. Kyler weighs like 20 pounds more than Bryce Young. Kyler has a high-end arm in terms of velocity. Kyler obviously is a high-end athlete. Bryce is none of those things. So when you look at the qualities, you go, it's what drives me nuts sometimes with Purdy. It's like, Brock, you need to be like Mr. Accuracy and Mr. Decision Maker, not Mr. like renegade, run around making plays here, where you kind of can because Brock is a much better athlete than Bryce. So he's really good with his feet. But sometimes I think he kind of gets into this mode like, bro, you're not Josh Allen, pump the brakes. Where Bryce is like, he's a pocket quarterback. He's kind of like a shittier version of Tua. It's like, what's going on here? And then you just can't really operate like that. And obviously the Panthers, you play some bad teams. You play the Falcons enough times. Yeah, you're going to get some wins. But you play a 49er team that, relative to previous years, is average at best for their standards in terms of the team they're rolling out there. And you just get mollywopped like that. I mean, Robert Saleh embarrassed Dave Canales and Bryce Young today. Like that direct deposit when it hits for Bryce, I think typically NFL players get paid on Tuesday. I would imagine coaches get paid like every other Friday, like a normal person. But they should think twice when they see that number hit and be like, yeah, I don't know if I earned this one. I'm not going to give it back. We signed contracts, but I feel a little guilty about spending this money because the performance. This is a production-based business, right? It's not about feelings or how much I like you. It's like, are you good or not? Can you get it done or you can't? And you're watching tonight, like Robert Saleh absolutely punked those two guys, and honestly made Bryce And it pains me to say this because, again, I'm not Monday morning quarterback. I would have taken him over CJ Stroud too. I was wrong. And looking back, it's like, John, you've been around these guys. In what I remember when I was in Philly thinking, like, Michael Vick is on the small end. And Michael Vick's got Bryce Young by 3 inches and got him by 20 miles an hour in terms of running and arm strength, not even comparable. It's like that would never work in the NFL. But it's like I saw him play against Georgia and Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Nolan Smith, take hits, bump back up, make plays. College is a different world because every guy's Nolan Smith in the NFL. Every single guy. The backups are. You saw tonight, Cleveland Farrell coming off the edge, who's an underwhelming, would be known as like a bust as a top 10 pick, but is going to have a 10-year NFL career. All these guys will hit your ass. All these guys can run. All these corners can cover. So if your arm's kind of average and you can't get the ball in, and the 49ers took full advantage of it. So that was, honestly, I'm probably more excited if that same game had happened and it was like Panthers, Cardinals or whatever. I don't know if I'd have the same juice, but the 49ers get my family going. And big win, Kyle's 8-4, and they deserve a lot of credit because they have had, like they do every year, a lot of injuries. Obviously, the Ayuk situation, which I hit on a little bit yesterday, still don't quite understand. I even saw Mike Silver on local radio in the Bay Area even discussing it, and even he was like, "Yeah, it's really confusing." And he's the guy reporting on the story. He's like, I wish I had more information, but it doesn't all add up. But I know this, and I spent a lot of time around that team. The moment you start doing that shit, even separate from the money, like the $25 million, you get shunned. Like that's never gonna fly with the John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, Robert Saleh kind of mantra culture mindset. Will never be tolerated. So not shocking at all to just see he's like ostracized. Like, listen, you're not gonna fight for your $25 million? Are you nuts? Are you on drugs? But regardless of that, like you're just not welcome around here. Because look, like Bosa, Fred Warner, like we want you guys around. And look, I mean, it's why Mac Jones has earned my respect to come in, not just play as well as he is, but to fit right in. It's why I started buying stock once I saw Sam Darnold and the way those guys talked about him. I'm like, maybe this guy's a higher level guy than I thought. And 3 years later, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Okay, a couple other things. One thing I just think we need to talk about a little bit with football. Football is not fair. Guess what else isn't fair? Life. Do you think it's fair if you're Kyle Shanahan and you look out there and all the guys you're paying a lot of money are on injured reserve with casts and knee braces? Right? Do you think it's fair when just some random guy gets fired from his job because they don't need him anymore and he's worked for the company for 30 years? Life is not fair. And I heard, I like Kevin Clark a lot, and I heard him on with Ryan Russillo. And both the guys were like, it wouldn't be fair to not give J.J. McCarthy next year to be the starter. And it's like, guys, this is not 6th grade. We're not teaching life lessons in the NFL. J.J. McCarthy, in his short career, is like the ultimate combination of disaster. He's not good or productive, and now he's always injured. It couldn't be going any worse. And we have recent examples of Anthony Richardson, of Trey Lance, of these teams pivoting so fast. And these aren't awful teams. Like Trevor Lawrence is going to be the Jags quarterback for like 12 years. He'll just be the quarterback in perpetuity. When you're hell, if you told me Bryce Young's their quarterback for like 8 years, somewhat believable. There is no chance in Minnesota, an organization that most of my life, going back to the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, the last couple years, like that they might not win Super Bowls, but they consistently win. They are well run. And I know Kevin O'Connell made some comments about organizations fail players more often than players fail organizations, but sometimes players just aren't good enough. And I think we have to look back at J.J. McCarthy and go, it might have been the perfect storm. You wanted to buy into the guy, but it turns out he couldn't have bedded a better cocoon. He was on a team that really wasn't a fair fight. And the only good team, especially like 3 or 4 years ago, they were playing in the Big Ten was Ohio State. He didn't have to do much. handed the ball off, and they played defense. He played for a coach that only wanted to run the ball. Obviously, now he plays for a coach that wants to throw it, and all the stats are out. He can't throw it. But I would say, as concerning as his poor play, we've seen a lot of young guys, Peyton Manning, Troy Aikman, come into the NFL and shit the bed early. Even Troy Aikman, I remember, was it the Cowboy documentary? Maybe I heard him say it in a podcast, that he thought after like a year that they might just move on from him. He's like, I don't know if I'm going to last. Peyton Manning, rookie year, couldn't have gone much worse. But they were available. They were on the field. This guy missed his entire rookie year with a knee injury. Wasn't even available to practice and quote-unquote develop. This year, he has the longest ankle sprain we've ever seen, and now he has a concussion. And a lot of people think like, oh, this is a fake concussion. This is a soft benching. Well, I follow the football pretty closely. A lot of guys, he's not the first and he won't be the last, a guy to get concussion-like symptoms either the next day or on the plane ride home. It happens. But there is no way around it that when you're not productive and you're not available, like in most industries, you're kind of useless. This is not like high school softball where we're trying to hold hands and bring everyone along and make sure everyone feels involved. I played on a high school football team. No one got cut. If you went out for the team, you got pads and a helmet. Everyone got to dress on game days. It's not the way the NFL works. And they're paying a lot of people on that team a lot of money. And I think J.J. McCarthy's time is, I know he's only played 6 games, but I don't just think it's ticking in Minnesota. I think it's in major, major trouble. And I think he's been so bad that you'd be hard-pressed to even sign someone else and make him the backup. You wouldn't feel comfortable with him playing in games. Because what he's shown right now, when he plays, you lose. And you look at some of these teams around the league, like their backup comes in, they can just win and function. And Minnesota goes, we're good. Look at the 49ers. What did I just say? Kyle Shanahan, Robert Saleh. Well, if you're Minnesota, what's your greatest asset besides Justin Jefferson? Kevin O'Connell, Brian Flores. Just give me Davis Mills. Give me Mac Jones. Give me a guy who can just function. I'll promise you this. We won't go 6-11. We might not go 15 wins or 14 wins again, but we'll be closer to 10 than we will 5. And if JJ had started every single game for him this year, I don't know if they win more than 4 or 5 games. He's just completely overwhelmed. Middlekauff, you got to give him time. Patience doesn't exist anymore. All these guys, there's too much money on the line. The clocks of survival for coaches, for GMs, for players is way too short now. There's no just give them 3 more years. No chance. If you tell me right now that J.J. McCarthy is the starting quarterback for Minnesota next year, I'd be stunned. I would be stunned. I cannot see it. The other thing about not being fair, the way the NFL works during the draft is, typically if you draft a Myles Garrett, a Nick Bosa, whoever really high, most people in the organization are fired up, right? The position coach, the coordinator, the head coach, the scouts, everyone's on board. Hell yeah. We just drafted Penei Sewell, Jamar Chase. Like, no one in the building disagrees. But as you go, once you get to the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th round, guess what? There are a lot of different opinions. It's like, the conversation I have most in my house? What are we doing for dinner? And I go, well, what do you want? She goes, well, what do you want? And we go back and forth. Well, imagine if you had, instead of just 2 people, you had 20 people. And this guy wants Italian. This guy wants Chinese. This dude wants Mexican. This dude's cool with cheeseburgers. Maybe this guy will do Italian, but he also kind of likes the Chinese too. Everyone's opinions are all over the board. And everyone in football has a different prerogative. Because if you're a defensive coordinator, you're going to want a defensive guy. If you're an offensive coordinator, you're going to go, we have a need here, and everyone's on different pages. So you see the video of Stefanski and Shedeur Sanders, and it's gone pretty viral. And I'm kind of torn because I do think it's a little over top on the reaction, but I also think it's like it's a rookie making his first start. I think you could have just you didn't even listen. he's given the game ball to one of the greatest players in the history of the sport, Myles Garrett, who looks like he's on pace for 30 sacks. Like right now, sitting here November 24th, if you said, John, how many sacks do you think Myles Garrett ends up with? He's got 18 now. Like next week against the 49ers, I think he bangs out a couple. Who else do they play? They got the Titans. The Bears O-line's not great. I mean, the Bills O-line definitely doesn't look good. Rodgers can't really move the same. The Bengals O-line, he could end up with 28. So it's like giving him the game ball isn't that weird. I also think rookie making his first start at quarterback, pretty easy one to go give it up for Shedeur, even if it's just an extra second or two. So I'm on board with like, a little weird. But here's the reality. Guys drafted in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, a lot of times the head coach might not even like that player. That might be the GM's pick. That might be someone, the assistant GM, pushing that guy on. Maybe the head coach likes that guy, but the coordinator and the position coach don't like that guy. Like, there are guys all over the league drafted, especially on the 3rd day, where people in the building, and this sounds crazy, do not like the player, do not want the player, do not want to coach the player. But it's just, you kind of have to. But still, we're all human beings. If you work with someone and you don't like them, you get to a point, especially if you're at their level where you're making a lot of money, it's hard to fake. And clearly, Stefanski drafted Dillon Gabriel. Now, anyone with the brain goes, Dillon Gabriel's not very good. Well, no shit. But Stefanski, who, listen, a lot of coaches, awful evaluators. So if you tell me that Stefanski was the guy banging the table for Dillon Gabriel, I can't look at Kevin Stefanski the same ever again. I just can't. Now, I can't blame him for Shedeur Sanders. The rest of the league wasn't touching him either. So it's not like, hey, man, everyone thought this guy was the next Andrew Luck. No one would touch the guy. But clearly, he doesn't like him, right? But here's the thing. Shedeur's no different than a lot of players all over the league. Their head coach or coordinator, whatever's not on board. Like, what do we talk about J.J. McCarthy? Production-based business. Play well enough. Keep making plays. There's nothing they can do. They can't take you off the field. The other thing, if you're Shedeur, look at the guy you're competing against, Dillon Gabriel. Dink and dunk capital of the world. I mean, he's just, the competition's not great. So the thing was, Kevin Stefanski, that's happening all over the NFL with late round picks. People are mad at guys on there. It's not, I don't think, abnormal. Now, it's not as public. You know why? Because most 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks, you, me, and everyone else watching football does not care about. No one cares. And really, you never see them. This is the most public situation with a 5th round pick as a rookie I can ever remember. Right? This would be the equivalent. It has a Tebow quality. But there also now feels like some tangible dislike. But if you're Shedeur, like, go out and make some plays. You get the 49ers this week. Their defense, they have a good defensive coordinator coming off a short week. You get them at home. I haven't checked the weather yet, but Purdy has not played well in weather games. So who knows, the 49ers might not score that many points. I also think the overreaction, they had 11 completions. I think they had 11 first downs. The Raiders had 19. So let's pump the brakes a little bit. But, like, Shedeur controls all this. You keep making plays. They can't sit you. There's no slowing it down. Stefanski, you'll win that battle because what happens? They typically fire coaches. They don't fire players that show promise. If there's a battle between the two, I know who Jimmy Haslam will pick. Google how many coaches he's fired. Pretty sure it's a lot of them. So I just think this notion of like he's not nice. It's just fucking football. It's like he doesn't like him. You're starting now as a 5th round pick. It's all, in front of you. So all these excuses, all these people complaining, it's like just he goes makes plays. Everyone will shut up and Stefanski will be fired at the end of the year. It'll be that simple. And honestly, the way Stefanski, maybe he wants to get fired. Maybe he's just tired of working in Cleveland. Last but not least, speaking of the AFC North, the Steelers. Can we just admit that what's happened in their franchise is kind of embarrassing? Because I have, and let me say this, I respect the hell out of the organization, out of the brand, out of the power of their fan base, which is enormous. what they have built over 50 plus years of winning in the NFL, anyone around football, any of you that have been to a game where your team plays the Steelers, I would say them and the Packers. I don't care if you're in San Francisco, if you're in Tampa, if you're in New York, they travel as well, if not better, than any team in the league. And when you think the Pittsburgh Steelers brand, it means something. I remember when I was working at Fresno State and I met Mean Joe Green. I never saw Mean Joe Green play a snap. He was retired before I was born. But I knew exactly who Mean Joe Green was. And it felt like I was meeting and shaking the hand of football royalty. And Mean Joe forgot his phone, and I found it. And he was really nice to me. But the Steelers, like starting in 2000, and that run of Cowher handing it over to Tomlin, they went to 5 conference championship games, 3 Super Bowls, and won 2. That stretch in the 2000s through 2010, they were dominant. And then once Tomlin and Roethlisberger got the reins, they were rattling off 12, 11, 13 win seasons. They went to the playoffs between 2010 and 2020, the majority of seasons, but they only went to 1 conference championship game. They did not go to the Super Bowl from 11 to 2020, obviously. And then the last 5 years of this decade, they've been to 3 wild card games. And this is where it's like, okay, you're going to conference championship games. Listen, it's what the Patriots do is abnormal. But if like every 3 or 4 years you're going to a conference championship game, you're rattling off some playoff victories, like, okay, it's like the Ravens, right? Or the Bills, what they've been doing this year. They can't beat the Chiefs. No different than a lot of people couldn't beat Michael Jordan. A lot of people couldn't beat Tiger Woods. Welcome to sports, right? But the Steelers could always hold their head high. Even the Tomlin run that he had from 11 to like the end of the 2018-19 run, it was like that was really impressive. But over the last 4 or 5 years, they have really fallen off. It's like, well, John, they never lose. It's like, okay. They've been to 3 wild card games, and they played the 3 best teams in their conference: the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Bills. In 2022, they played the Chiefs. They lost 42-21. In 2024, which was the 23 season, they played the Bills. They lost by 2 touchdowns. Last season, they played the Ravens, and they lost by 2 touchdowns. Now, they're currently not even in first place after the Baltimore Ravens started 1-5. Their quarterback, if you just watched him the other day against the Jets, looks like he's going about 50%. And there is not a soul that I know that would not take the Ravens to end up winning that division over the Steelers. And I've been saying this for a while. Like, I'm no longer saying you should fire the guy, and I don't root for anyone to get fired. But I think we have to acknowledge that this run is kind of over. This Tomlin thing is not working. And honestly, it's not even all his fault. Their talent, the team that I grew up on, definitely in the 2000s, but even that run of like from 11 to like 16 or 17, they had so much more talent on their roster than they do now. TJ Watt's an elite player. Hayward is a legend. Love that guy. He's been on this podcast before. Obviously, Rodgers, in the peak of his powers, one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. But now he's 41. He's got a broken bone in his left wrist. Can't even play games. And you're going with Mason Rudolph. You have 1 wide receiver who's kind of overpaid. You have 7 tight ends. You don't really have a true number 1 running back. And you can't win any games. I mean, every single time it's one thing, you lose to the Bills, right? Another thing to look up and you're losing to Caleb Williams. And honestly, they kind of worked you in the second half. You deserve to lose that game. You're not as good as them. And is there any Steeler fan alive that would be like, who would you want to be the head coach of your team for the next 5 years? Mike Tomlin or Ben Johnson? Because I'll bet I know what they would say. They would say Ben Johnson. And eventually, you have to pivot. And a lot like Alabama, a lot like Ohio State, a lot like the Green Bay Packers, you're an organization where people would be lined up to go work. It speaks for itself. The history, the passion, and the overall standard of winning. But the standard just doesn't feel the same. And what they used to be, they no longer are. And if you're just bragging about, yeah, we get to a wild card and then we play a good team and we lose by 20 points, that feels kind of sad. Imagine telling a Steeler fan in 2008 that would eventually be your destiny. You're like, I don't really want that. It's like, yeah, and you really don't have any future. It's like, well, who's our quarterback? Well, it's this 41-year-old guy who's probably going to retire, and now he's injured, and then his backup's Mason Rudolph, who obviously is in the future, and yeah, it's just your GM. We're not even sure is any good anymore because Colbert retired, and this was the guy negotiating the contracts, and now the talent on the team looks dramatically worse than it once originally did. So I think part of the Steelers, what they always had is the talent. It always jumped off the screen, the physicality, and you watch them like, yeah, TJ's been on the team for a decade, but who are the other guys? Where's the offensive talent? The DK Metcalf, I still maintain, and listen, I'm not always right. I thought the George Pickens trade for Dallas was crazy, but I thought it was crazy because you have a first year head coach who's going to have a lot of pressure. It's gonna put a lot on Dak, and it's worked. The DK thing is like you're going to give a second and $150 million to a guy for the next 3 or 4 years when you don't even know who's going to be the quarterback that entire time or how your offense is going to play. When your offensive coordinator is really much more of a run first guy, it didn't add up. But that's what you do when you're just like, oh, players, you're kind of playing Madden. Like, let's just acquire this guy. Let's make a trade for this guy. John Snyder's like, wait, you're really giving me a second round pick for DK Metcalf? See you. Adios. Have a good one. Godspeed. So it pains me to say this because I respect the hell out of what this team stands for, but I think we got to be brutally honest and be like they've kind of sad what the Steelers are currently. Adios. Have a great night.